Hey, hi, Bob.
Ahoy.
Ahoy, good, great. I'm Dave Tack. That's Bob Drummond. We've been friends since the 90s, and we like Star Trek, I guess is the way to say it. We're making a Star Trek podcast because we're excited about Star Trek. Is that fair to say?
It is. I will say that it is a little bit like what Stephen Moffat said about Doctor Who fans don't actually like a lot of Doctor Who. Huh. I am a Star Trek fan who doesn't really like a lot of Star Trek.
And with that, let's talk about Star Trek. All right, here's a thing that I can't believe I'm about to say. The best Star Trek: The Next Generation since All Good Things in, I think, 1994 is happening in 2023.
Well, I think it's stranger than that because it's not just the best Star Trek: The Next Generation. It's just the best Star Trek, full stop.
Yeah. May 23rd, 1994 is when All Good Things aired. And that's bizarre enough that is my math right? Almost 30 years. I did it with my fingers. It checks out. And it's particularly bizarre given the first two seasons of Picard and other new Star Trek, I think. But I guess it's been a few weeks, maybe a month or so, when specifically people who did not like Picard seasons 1 or 2 started saying like, hey, they sent out the screeners and I can't say much, but this might be pretty good.
Yeah.
It became sort of impossible not to get excited. And instead of just rolling our eyes at each other about Star Trek in text messages or just straight up giving up on seasons, by the time the first episode aired, you're like, oh, let's just do a podcast about this and see where it goes because it's that good.
Yeah.
That's where we're at. And I'm still honestly kind of blown away.
Yeah, it was a shock to me. I remember the hilarity of them releasing a trailer several episodes into season 2 of Picard.
Right.
That basically said, don't worry. Yeah, the next season is going to be completely different and it's going to be maybe what you'd like to see. Mm-hmm. And I sort of forgot about that, and I thought, you had brought things up, and you don't hate Strange New Worlds, which is high praise these days, I guess. But yeah, I think the first inkling I got was Robert Meyer Burnett. Do you ever watch him on YouTube, or do you know the name at all?
I don't think I do.
He's an old school fan. I think he's probably older than us. And anytime I hear him sort of pontificate on things, it seems like I'm aligned pretty closely with his sort of tastes when, with like 70s and 80s, 90s movies and television. And yeah, I saw him do a video and he was like, hey, I don't want to freak anybody out, but I've watched Picard all the way through several times, Picard season 3, and it's excellent.
The best case scenario seems to have actually happened.
Yeah.
Which is to say they seem to have made a Star Trek show. Yeah,
it does actually seem something like a Star Trek show.
It feels like it.
Which again which is literally the lowest possible bar for making a Star Trek show. Is to make a Star Trek show, we have made a Star Trek show.
Mm-hmm. Well, it feels like maybe we should talk about that actually, about sort of what makes Star Trek, and why it hasn't felt a lot like Star Trek lately. The sort of new, what do we call it? New Trek, I guess.
Kurtzman Trek, maybe.
Sure. Mm-hmm. And it just feels. Look. The best way I can say this is we already got Star Trek. We both like Star Trek. We particularly The Next Generation, right? And Star Trek, like speaking as a fan of Star Trek, it's weird. Like Star Trek is strange. It has its own logic. It has its own view of what happens to humanity in the future. And when they announced at I guess it was CBS at the time, Paramount now, because there was that weird split between when they broke up, who got the TV and who got the movies.
Yeah, Paramount and CBS, yeah.
Yeah. But like the idea that Picard was coming back or that Star Trek was coming back was exciting, at least in the sense that like it had basically burned itself out by Enterprise. Like they had the same stable of writers, more or less, writing 24, 26 episodes a season.
Yeah, for what, like 16 years or something?
Yeah, like it's okay that it eventually at a certain point didn't quite work out. But to me, a lot of the problem with new Trek is that it hasn't felt much like Star Trek. And like if Star Trek is just dour, dark science fiction, like sort of everything else, then what's the point? You know what I mean? Like just let Star Trek be Star Trek.
Yeah.
Is the thing in my mind. And I'm, I don't think we need to take a lot of time crapping all over stuff we don't like. But the truth is I think Discovery gets worse every season. I think Strange New Worlds is really good. I think Lower Decks is brilliant. I have not seen the other kiddie-ish.
Prodigy, I think.
Yes, Prodigy, although that's supposed to be good. And I liked Strange New Worlds. And I thought that Picard had a pretty bad first season and an embarrassing second season, which again makes this all the more remarkable.
Yeah, I would say, at least for me, the rot goes back to the first J.J. Abrams movie. Mm-hmm. I know it's not a total train wreck, I get it, but it sort of set in motion this whole let's make a bunch of Star Trek that's not really Star Trek.
I don't think everything has to stay the same. I don't think you need to go back exactly. Like, please, nobody hear me say that you have to stick to the exact formula. Like, they already made The Next Generation. You don't have to exactly remake that thing. But at a certain point, you get far enough away from what the core is, and you're making something different, not just like evolving it. And it felt, this is just a way of explaining it. I'm not trying to mind read here, but it felt like the people who were in charge of making Star Trek were a little embarrassed or didn't really want to make Star Trek.
Yeah.
And the thing about season 3 of Picard is they just decided to make Star Trek. That's why I like Lower Decks. It's because it's just a Star Trek show where they lovingly point and laugh at Star Trek. And Strange New Worlds is a sort of, surely it has to be a reaction to the less than amazing reception to previous new Trek. And Picard season 3 is just like, I don't know. It's like they're not afraid or embarrassed to go have a space adventure.
Or this is just a total accident. And this man, so the Terry Matalas, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
So what you know a bit about him. I don't really know anything. What's his story?
I just knew him from, he was the creator no, I guess not the creator, at least the showrunner for 12 Monkeys, which was on Sci-Fi maybe 5-6 years ago, something to that effect. And I just thought it was a really good show. It was one of those Firefly seems bigger in my mind, but like the kind of show that like is good and gets made despite not having much of an audience. And when I found out that, I think the story, at least as far as I know, is that Kurtzman and Akiva Goldsman were sort of shepherding at least, sort of the larger Star Trek revival. And then they hired this Terry Matalas maybe prior to season 2. But at some point something happened, and Akiva Goldsman basically finished season 2, which was, as I said, pretty bad. And Matalas peeled off and worked, I guess, must have wrote season 3 as they were doing season 2 or shooting season 2, because they shot them back to back. And I don't know why. There were problems in production. I know that with the COVID and rewrites and all this stuff. But the bottom line, all I can evaluate is what they put out, and it wasn't great. And I thought, well, like, first of all, it's not the same guys who made seasons I disliked. So that's probably good. Second, it's a guy who made a thing that I did like, so that's probably good. And that is as far as I went with it for the last year.
I think that you kind of let me onto this. I remember at the beginning of Picard season 2, because there was that first episode or so where everybody, it was not the sort of overwhelming joy we're experiencing now, but it sort of felt a little bit like Star Trek. And I think and I remember I was very excited because they went to great length to show the state of the current fleet of the Starfleet, which, as you know, is very important to everyone, including me and you. And I remember how we sort of lambasted season 1 when they literally did when the fleet when Riker shows up with the fleet and it's one ship copy and pasted 60 times.
Right.
So then the first episode of season 2, they're showing, this is the 25th century version of the Excelsior, and this is the 25th version of the Miranda class. And I was very excited. And you said, well, hey, get really excited, because word on the street is the guy who was responsible for that episode is doing season 3.
Yep.
And you were correct.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I couldn't,
again,
because they were, as usual, I couldn't let myself get too excited because I had been let down. Like I was inches away essentially from hate watching. Maybe I just was hate watching at a certain point.
Picard?
Yeah.
Did you finish season 3? 2?
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I've seen every episode. But yeah, just watching through my fingers as I covered my face, because it was just it was disconnected at best. And the problem is, I had this, not to go off on a tangent,
please,
but it's basically the same problem I had with The Last Jedi, which is like, boy, that person looks a lot like a person I feel like I know, but isn't acting a lot like the person I think I know. And they did that just essentially all throughout seasons 1 and 2, but particularly 2. The thing about Picard in season 3, let's talk about just a moment in episode 2 where the bad guys show up, right? And what does Picard want to do when the bad guys show up? He wants to talk and negotiate and be a diplomat, which is what Picard would do, right? And it's like, that's not super difficult, but if I feel like that was the guy who I knew from the 90s, well, then I think you're probably doing something right. Does that make sense?
It does. I still feel like, as good as this series is so far, and now that the sort of initial euphoria is starting to maybe sort of subside a little bit, the show does still seem to me to be in a slightly parallel universe to the Berman era, TNG through Enterprise. I couldn't imagine, there would be no scene where Picard and Riker are in a bar drinking a bottle of bourbon together, sort of speaking kind of casually and colloquially, unless they were like on the holodeck playing characters. So there still is that feeling of, this isn't quite the same universe, maybe in my own headcanon, that we saw before. Picard still, even now in season 3, he still comes off as I don't know, wouldn't you say kind of like a kindly grandfatherly?
Yeah. I think so.
Now, there's nothing to say that people can't change as they age, certainly, right. But he's still, it's not quite the same Picard to me, but definitely more like real Picard this season.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you a little headcanon for that, which is All Good Things. So the last episode of The Next Generation is maybe the perfect final episode of a television show. And the whole point of that episode is to get to the last scene where Picard, who, like, there are places I worked in my life where management and non-management did not interact. And Picard, for, 7 seasons or whatever it was very much under that. And it all led to this idea that he finally joined the poker game that everybody else had. And like, I don't want to, one of the weird things, or one of the things I guess I struggle with, although struggles maybe too strong a term for this, but like, the show goes off the air and we don't have any answers about what happens. Forget the movies for a second. In my mind, at the very least, all of my friends are hanging out, going off on adventures. I don't want to get specific, but you know what I mean? Like, the way that they left it. And then they made some movies where they went off and had adventures. But more or less, the idea is, I know those people. I watched those people. I don't have all the answers. I don't have any control over it. But you have a fairly good idea if you invest that much time, 40 some minutes an episode, 26 episodes a season or whatever it is over 7 seasons. You have a pretty good idea of who these characters are and what they might do. And so if they show up and do something that doesn't seem like them, that's kind of a problem.
Yeah.
But if, to get to your point directly, like, there was at least the seed planted that Picard was going to be less barky, somewhat more kind and gentle. And that, like, basically that last scene can fill in a lot of gaps for me.
Absolutely. No, that's a very clever angle that I only realized as soon as you referenced All Good Things. I was like, oh, yeah. I know exactly where you're going with that, and that makes sense. But there still is there is still the sense that these characters, even in season 3, are acting more like modern humans, much more so than they ever did in the sort of, I don't know, what would Gene Roddenberry say, Homo superior, something like that?
Probably,
like we are evolved, and
right.
You know, there's no conflict, and there's no money, and there's no alcohol.
Right, which means there's no conflict.
Yeah.
If you're trying to design a narrative for the show, but like them's the rules by the guy who created it. You know what I mean? And again, this gets back to my point earlier, which is, well, if you want to change all the rules about Star Trek, you're making something different than Star Trek. You know what I mean? That was a huge problem with me and Picard in season 1. Again, not to rat hole, but just as a way of explanation, like Starfleet, like the swearing, uncaring Starfleet did not. I understand, as you just said, things can happen off screen, right? I understand that things can change, but it changed so much that it was like they're wearing uniforms but not acting like it.
What was your take of, let's say, for example, the scene? So we're at the point we're recording this. We've seen the first 2 episodes. Mm-hmm. The scene on the, or I guess the several scenes on the bridge of the Titan. The characters to me on the bridge seem slightly more animated than your average Star Trek bridge crew. Is that fair?
I'm going to give you, I can't believe I get to talk about this thing that's just lived inside my mind. There seems to be like a director's Bible for new Trek. And it goes like this. This is like the arrow and the FedEx logo. Once I describe it, you can't unsee it. What seems to happen is somebody in charge says something, and what you do is you cut away to between 2 and 4 people turning their heads and looking very serious to react at the thing. Alternatively, what they will do is they will start with like a steady cam on one character and then swoop around the bridge and do a 180 back to the characters who you need to talk about. They've been doing that on Discovery and Strange New Worlds and Picard.
Well, you know, and I have a theory, and this would sort of tie into what you're saying, is that there are a million clues in any television show or movie that will tip you off as to roughly when that product was produced. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm saying?
70s sideburns in Star Wars.
Yeah, and it's so much more than that. There's so many, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. There are so many clues in every frame. Like, even if you can't articulate it, and even if you're not conscious of it, it's the film grain, the kind of lenses they're using, the diffusion, the way they're recording the sound, the way the camera's moving. And we tend to think of let's take like motion picture directors. We think of them as these auteurs, and you know, and they have this bold style. And maybe many of them do, someone like Kubrick. But the thing I always think about is take The Wolf of Wall Street. Mm-hmm. That's Martin Scorsese. Mm-hmm. And he's been making movies since what, the late 60s, early 70s. You know, Raging Bull is an absolutely, it's a great film, but it's a beautiful film to look at. The Wolf of Wall Street is this trend, and it's kind of going away a little bit, but in the last, say, 10 years, there was this trend of the very aggressive color grading where everyone's skin is orange and the background is blue because someone figured out that those are, you know, complementary colors and the cool background makes your face pop. This can be overused, and I think this often looks horrible. That is all over The Wolf of Wall Street. If you go look at the screen grabs of The Wolf of Wall Street, I think it looks horrendous and looks just like a horrible movie of that time period. So I don't even know if what you're saying, I don't even know if there's a Bible that says that. It's just that when movies and TVs are being created, it's so hard to break out of just, you know, every camera operator, every cinematographer, every director, every actor, every sound guy, every grip, whatever. It's so hard to break free from the sort of well, this is what everyone's doing right now. And then in 5 years, it'll be a little bit different. And, it's funny, the thing I said about the crew acting a little animated, I remember hearing an anecdote, I'm assuming it's true, about Apollo 13, which was when they went to make the movie, they had to sort of amp up the drama a little bit in the capsule when they were having the, life support problems, just for drama's sake, because the real astronauts are so well trained and are, the best of the best of the best, that they were virtually stone cold calm when all that was going on. And that obviously wouldn't translate all that well to a feature film. And that's sort of what, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm a little set in my ways, but I kind of like my Starfleet officers to be very calm under pressure. I'm trying to think back to the Next Gen, to TNG. Would you say usually, they weren't spazzing out at the control panels, were they?
No, I don't think anybody ever was. Not that I can think, no.
But on, season 2, but on episode 2, there's all kind of, sir, we have to do this right now.
Yeah, it's very dramatic.
What do you make of the Shaw, the captain of the Titan?
I love him.
He's very funny.
That actor's from 12 Monkeys. That's where I knew him from. I think he exists in I want to say it's usually admirals, or was usually admirals in TNG, but he exists in a long line of people of authority who are not Picard being jerks.
Yeah.
And there is Alan Rickman was great for this, playing a bad guy who is not just opposed to the thing that you want to happen, but judging not just the characters, but the people watching, rooting for the characters. And I just thought he played it and has played it excellently. How about you?
I do. I loved his character. I loved that introductory scene in episode 1 where he's eating before they show up, and he doesn't, he sort of makes fun of Picard's wine and Riker's taste in music.
There's so much good, subtle acting in that. Riker and Picard are looking at each other and just sharing little glances like you and your wife after many years of marriage would do, right? And it's happening several times over there, and it rings so true. I love those little things.
Well, what was funny was he sort of started slowly, and then it just kept going so at first maybe I think you sort of get the sense Picard and Riker are kind of oh wait, did he mean to be a dick when he just said that, or was he joking, or did he not mean? And then once he got to insult 5 and 6, I think they fully understood what was going on.
Yeah, right. And what could they do about it, basically?
Yeah.
Or Riker said enough, I believe, in that scene. I've watched the first episode a couple of times. It's a thing I didn't think I would hear again. I really had sort of written it off. And I feel like that's where a lot of the shine is on here. Part of me knows that I am, because it's the best TNG anything in decades, I probably think it's better than it might actually be. We'll see in the fullness of time. All I know is that it's really fun to watch. Yeah, they're doing it right.
Well, everyone, all of those sort of YouTubers who have hated New Trek and suddenly said this is good. It was a very similar trajectory, I want to say, for most of them, which was a lot of them only got the first. I don't know how many episodes are there total. 10.
It says 10.
I think a lot of them only got the first 6 or 8 at first, and they said, I've seen the first 6 and this is amazing. And then they got the last batch, and then they were all like, it's even better than I thought it was going to be. So
no kidding.
I'm hoping that it does build to quite a crescendo. And Metalis has been very upfront that he wanted to give the Next Gen a send-off the way the TOS crew had with Star Trek 6.
That was sort of the tragedy, wasn't it? They just sort of faded away.
Well, and I have very strong memories of this. You and I and a bunch of us, we all went to see Nemesis it was 2002. It was fall 2002.
Okay.
And the shame of the whole thing was it literally came out 4 days before the Two Towers came out.
Uh-huh.
And I was certainly counting the minutes till the Two Towers came out. You perhaps maybe less so, but you were still counting the minutes until the Two Towers came out.
That was the joke. It was we're gonna mix franchises, but it was Professor X versus
Magneto.
Yes. Professor X versus Magneto at the box office.
But Nemesis came out, and I know we were all just hoping there'd be another Two Towers trailer before Nemesis started, and nobody cared at all. Like, I certainly didn't care.
Didn't care about what?
I mean, I didn't care about watching Nemesis at all. It was just a way. It was sort of, on the one hand, it was for me, it was sort of compulsory or obligatory. Like, okay, well, there's a TNG movie. I have to go see the TNG movie. I don't really want to see this movie. From all indications, it's going to be worse than the last three, which I didn't think were that great anyway.
Yep.
And I was, like I said, just literally just couldn't wait to see the Two Towers. So it wasn't until years later that I realized, wow, I like to complain a lot about the TNG era and about the Berman era, but I didn't really want it to end still. I still liked the idea that there was, they'll get it again in another 2 years. We'll have another TNG movie. And this time, maybe Nicholas Meyer will come back and write it, or, something will happen. Yeah. It'll be good. And it just, as we got further away, it was just clear, like, well, we didn't really know, at least I didn't really know what we had until it was gone. And it wasn't coming back.
Yeah. And at the time, it was easy to complain about what we had, right?
Yeah.
Like, the big contrast between our group of friends, I mean, and you spearheaded it, was like the idea of, this is how you put it in 1998. Like, forget 1998, 1994 or 5,
yeah, 5,
right?
Yeah.
The idea that, like, Babylon 5 was a science fiction show with all the credibility of Star Trek, but it didn't hit the reset button on the universe every episode.
Yeah.
And that was interesting because, again, Star Trek had a formula, but it's the formula I've been frankly pining for, I mean, the whole idea of Strange New Worlds is serialize the characters, not the story. Well, that'll work. Fine by me.
Yeah, and the problem with that Berman era, or of 90s TV in general, was they weren't serializing either. The one that I always think of is the most hilarious example of what was driving me crazy about Star Trek episodic television in the mid-90s. There was an episode, I think it was called Ethics. And I want to say it was season 5 or 6. And Worf, I don't remember specifically, but something to the effect of Worf breaks his back, or Worf is paralyzed.
Oh, yeah.
And he's going to have to go through some insanely complicated surgery to get the use of his legs back. And they made clear at the end it was going to take months or years of physical therapy, and he will probably never be his old self again.
This is going to take time, Worf. Your muscles are still sorting out their new signals. Don't rush it.
And they never mentioned that episode again, ever. Like, the next week it was forgotten. It was the same thing with, do you remember the one? Like the climate change one, or whatever it was, where they decided they made a big song and dance at the very end of the episode that from now on, unless there's an emergency, Starfleet ships cannot go above warp 5 because it's destroying space.
No,
you don't remember this?
No,
they literally said that. But
that's a bad idea.
The funny part was, unless there's an emergency, you can't go faster than warp 5. Well, when are they going to have an episode of Star Trek that doesn't involve an emergency?
It's a show about emergencies.
Yeah. But there was that thing in the 90s where I was getting tired. I mean, I look back on it now with rose-colored glasses, and I've always said this to you. There's a lot of received wisdom when it comes to Star Trek. I mean, there's a lot of received wisdom, obviously, about everything, clearly, but Star Trek in particular, there's all these there's the sort of dogma that everybody downloads at some point, even before the internet. I don't know where it came from, but it was like, Star Trek the motion picture's boring, Star Trek 2's great, the even ones are good, the odd ones are bad.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just, right off the bat, I think you and I probably like the motion picture the best of all of them.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the one that, another one is TNG didn't get good until season 3.
Right.
Where I have a different take on this, and I think I've told you this, is I liked season 1 and 2 because clearly, the episodes were uneven. Season 1 particularly is not that great, but there's this sense of trying things, and it's just not the same thing every week. Once they got past season 3, And I think particularly once they got past the best of both worlds cliffhanger, it seemed like the show kind of crystallized. All the Star Trek shows, maybe not DS9 quite as much, but the show was never quite the same, I don't think, after Best of Both Worlds. It was like the Berman machine was in place, and we're going to have the sort of bland background music. The sound of the ship is sort of humming in the background. The characters seem like their dialogue is looped almost constantly, and there's this very low-key, very even keel, nothing ever changes. Worf is paralyzed one week, and the next week they never mention it again. Now, that being said, I think it is easier to go back and watch episodes of TNG now than, say, Babylon 5.
Why is that?
Well, there is a joy in being able to just dip into an episode, enjoy a sort of clever story, and move on, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I feel like there probably is a middle ground somehow between totally standalone episodes and episodes nowadays where if you miss one, you don't really know what's going on. And like you said, maybe that's the way to do it. So what was the phrase you used? You said serialize the characters, but not the story. Or the plot or whatever. Right.
The characters are going to grow, but there isn't like a mystery established in episode 1 solved in episode 10, I criticize the formula as it was happening, and then I grew to miss the formula. Mm-hmm. I do not know how you can write 24 episodes a season for 7 seasons. Like that is a insane amount of stuff to figure out, and how do you try and keep that fresh? There was a like you said, a Berman machine. It worked until it didn't, and I think a lot of what New Trek is trying to figure out what Star Trek can be. And again, I'm not arguing to go back to the old thing. Just don't change it so much that it doesn't look like it. And Strange New Worlds and Picard season 3 seem to be the logical answer to that, which is what Star Trek could be, what it was, but also made now. What a wild idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's why we're recording. That's why it's interesting. That's why it's exciting. We don't have to run down, although maybe we'll do that for future episodes. We can talk about each episode, but why do the play-by-play for 2 episodes at this point?
Yeah.
Riker reminds me of Riker. He's not telling anybody that he's going to kick their precious Tau Shiar ass or anything. That it's just who is that? That does not, no admirals are telling anybody to shut the fuck up. Riker is acting like Riker. He is so happy to be there. Picard is acting like a diplomat. The rule was clearly, what if we just make a Star Trek-ass Star Trek The Next Generation show for season 3? And if we walk away from this thing, never making another thing, we don't have to say we went out with a whimper. And
it's funny, the other and I thought that we were in for something good. So not only was I feeling better when a bunch of YouTubers who I knew hated New Trek suddenly started to sing the praises of the show, but the other thing that was interesting was a lot of people are name-checking 2 different movies that I know both of us really like. They've been referring a lot to The Hunt for Red October, which we both have a deep, abiding love for.
I had that red VHS.
So did I, yes.
It was amazing.
And the Picard-Riker relationship specifically, they were going for sort of Butch and Sundance kind of vibe, which I think absolutely is going on right now.
Yeah, because Riker was in, at a certain point, it was reasonable to ask the question why Riker wasn't leaving the Enterprise, right? Riker was, as a character, almost sort of a hedge. He was the Kirk while they made this skinny, bald diplomat with an English accent from France, the head of the show. And at a certain point with the character, you have to wonder why he's not moving on. And he is just sort of stuck in a rut, being the guy who asks questions. But they don't have to. They can dispense with that for Picard season 3.
Yeah,
they've both made it right. And Riker's a captain, Picard's an admiral, but still and there's stuff to come. There's a single line, by the way, about how Deanna and their child would be glad to get some time away from him. So like, there's Riker stuff to come. They said that in the first year.
Yeah.
He said that in the first episode. But like, they're just old buddies. They feel like old buddies. They literally are old buddies in the real world and in the show.
But I mean, going to the Butch and Sundance thing, there is a joy in those two, and I'm sure it's very sort of meta too, because it's the characters, but it's also the actors. They're together again. They're off having another adventure, and they're both just really enjoying themselves.
Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah,
like they are having fun. They're doing it while smiling. Which is great. It feels good to watch. It doesn't feel sad like so much modern science fiction and so much new Trek. It does not feel like a bummer to watch.
I mean, wasn't there talk with Patrick Stewart that the way they brought him back was he said he did not want to do The Next Generation again. He didn't want to wear the uniform. He didn't want to do any of it.
It's not what I would like him to have said necessarily, but I can get like the been there, done that. Like, what's the point of me coming back? I already did that in my career. I want to try some new stuff. It's just that the new stuff they did sucked. And now they just put him in a spaceship. And it's good.
Yeah.
I feel like I keep making the same point, but it's obvious to me, but was clearly not obvious to the, I'm sure, very well-paid and credentialed people who are trying to make an entire show out of being in L.A. in the 2020s.
Yeah.
Like, it just didn't work. It wasn't good enough to justify the break from, again, Star Trek stuff. And like, don't walk right back into what you used to do and make the same mistakes. But what if there was a core there that you built upon, not turned away from?
Well, all I can say is, and this is probably the ultimate tip of the cap, this is probably the first time since I can remember that I have looked forward to watching a television show.
Yeah, dude. 2 weeks in a row, the last shot comes up, and I'm like, damn, I don't want to wait a week. And I don't know if that's happened since I got really into the first ever Survivor that was on, whatever year that was, 2000. And I remember that was the first time I ever felt that. But like two out of 2 times, I was like, man, I do not want to wait a week.
Well, and now, with the streaming services and all this stuff, it seems like some of them, go for the Netflix model of let's just dump everything on the first day, which I guess has its merit. And, straight in this case, I think I think I would have probably enjoyed it for this. I probably would have watched the whole thing in a day or two. But there is also a virtue to the way they're doing it, one per week, because we can do this and people can have conversations and we can guess what's going to happen and we can look forward to it.
They could release them all at the same time, but this, I like this. I like the idea of stopping and thinking and being able to watch it and sort of marinate it and it being, well, I guess it's old-fashioned a little bit, which is appointment television, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm excited for next Thursday and the Thursday after that. I don't want to know anything about what's going to happen. I don't want to watch the trailers for next week. Like, I'll think about what happened in the episode, make some guesses or whatever, but probably not think too hard about it because I'm enjoying the ride so much that I kind of just don't even want to spoil it for myself.
All right. Well, why don't we do this before we go out? Why don't we play a little game? Because I maybe know a little bit more than you. I do not know any spoilers for sure. I remember hearing hints being dropped over the last year and a half. Oh, this might happen, that might happen. You are pretty rigorous about avoiding spoilers, right? I
don't read the dust jacket of books because they wind up giving stuff away on page 250 out of, 450. So like, I would rather just, whoever sat down to write a book or a movie or a TV show wanted me to experience it in a certain way and crafted it that way. And that's how I would prefer to experience it.
All right. Well, why don't we do this for the benefit of our massive listening audience?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I will not say anything.
Okay.
Why don't you make some predictions about the rest of the season and then we can see what you got right and what you got wrong.
Well, I can tell you what I know. We could start with that.
Sure. All right. Okay.
There's something I know and something I guess I didn't know.
Okay.
Which is I know the entire cast is coming back.
Which, that's not a secret.
Right.
Now wait, but does that include Tasha Yard? Is that Guinan? Is it Wesley? Is it Barkley?
I hope so. I think no. I would maybe Guinan. I guess there's a possibility, but really, it's. You know what I would guess? No, I would say the core. I would say the core team. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought Barclay or Wesley back, but I don't think. I don't think that they need or Tasha. I don't think they need to be there, and I think this. I have enough trust at this point in the mastermind of this season for him to go like that'd be fun, but no, like we're telling a core team story.
What about my personal favorite all-time TNG character? You know who it is?
The no.
It's a lady.
Oh my God, Dr. Pulaski.
I love again a lot of received fan wisdom. How much better Dr. Crusher is. I am Team Pulaski. She is 100 times better than Crusher, and I will go to the mattresses on that. Do you think is that actress even still alive? Is Diana Muldaur?
No,
I don't know. Is she?
I have no idea.
Oh man!
But she has no place in this season in my mind. In the season that I'm inventing, no.
Okay.
She has no place. Nor does Wesley. Guinan could, because Guinan could kind of fit mystically into any story, so sure. But they did Guinan already, so they don't need her. Like they're even writing off characters from Picard, the show. They're trying to be, I think, svelte.
Well, I have some bad news for you. Diana Muldaur is 84 years old, and I'm crossing my fingers.
All right. Well, I guess we'll see.
All right. What else?
There's. You want to know what? Though the one other thing I know, is, I know somebody who's coming back, and that I wish I didn't know, and that's Moriarty.
Yeah.
I did not watch a trailer, but I heard somebody say he was in a trailer.
Wait a minute.
I think that'll be great.
Wait, you're saying that you haven't even seen trailers?
No,
because there's other major characters that are in the trailers.
Oh no, I haven't a clue.
I won't say that.
I don't know.
Wait a minute. Wait, Dave. There are other characters in like the poster.
I haven't looked at the poster. I mean, I know that it's like a watercolor-ish episode 1-ish posters, but no, I don't. Like I'm telling you, I would rather not know. I would rather be surprised.
This is like that college professor that we both had who didn't own a TV and was very proud.
Yeah.
Very proud.
I mean, I'm not trying to be that way. I just don't want to know.
Okay.
Well,
I will not say a word.
Like, I honestly think, like, one of the things I love about Picard is that they don't do the full title sequence at the beginning of the episode, which I think is great in general because it just gets you in. But also, I don't have to see the name of the actor.
Yep, that's true.
Who's going, like, how many times has that happened?
That's true.
I assume that's why they're doing it, right? Like, we're going to get, I know that Geordi's going to be there. Look, here's what I'm certain is going to happen. They're all going to eventually be there. They're not going to do, Geordi appears in an episode, but he doesn't hang out with the crew. Like, the crew is actually going to be physically in the same place. Surely they must sit around some sort of conference table and have a discussion about what to do.
Oh, the days.
There's nothing more Star Trek than that.
The glory days of the conference room.
Other than that, I haven't a clue. I don't know. I have no expectations. I'm just thrilled to be on the ride.
I did tell you which episode to go back and watch from season 1, and you shocked me. I gave you fair warning, and I said, I think I know what episode is wrapped up with the villain. Do you want to know? And you had a moment of weakness.
Do you think that is, so the episode is Conspiracy from season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that is... That seemed to me more likely before I saw episode 2.
Well, I will say the ship. Did you notice Amanda Plummer? Is that the actress's name?
I think so.
Her ship. Did you notice the sort of front of the ship?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Looked a little.
It's very that thing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it.
All right. How closely did you go through the closing credits, which are spectacular?
Not at all.
So you okay? Because there's all kind of little hints.
I saw more this week than I did last week, but Geordi apparently works at a museum the Starfleet Museum, and I saw the names of ships that were there. So please, Lord, bring us to the museum where we see all of the ships in the same place.
Yes.
Like, and I get covered from head to toe in Goosebumps. There's a prediction.
You got covered to head to toe in what?
Goosebumps?
Okay, good. I didn't know where that sentence was going. There's this Frontier Day thing happening. That's like the 4th of July or something, right? Like there's going to be like a parade or something, right?
I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, that would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're just engineering a way for an excuse for that to happen. That'll work.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I think they're going to take Kirk out of the Nexus.
Oh my goodness.
No.
Why didn't they just ignore the events of... I mean, look.
If it's late, it's played, man.
Worf.
I don't like it, but it's true.
Worf is killing dudes. They've clearly ignored the earth-shattering events of... What was the episode called? Ethics.
Yes.
So why can't they ignore, like, Kirk fighting on a bridge in a desert in Southern California?
They could, but they won't.
It seems like everyone's saying that it's really going to build to quite a special send-off. What do we... I mean, what could that be?
Death.
It's true.
Although they tried that already. I would say, one thing I know... Well, I kind of know, which is the whole idea of season... Like, they signed Patrick Stewart for 3 seasons. They're saying that this is the final season. But I heard somebody say that Patrick Stewart was like, well, maybe this isn't the end of what we do.
I heard that too.
I kind of assumed that, like, I mean, there is a way to close the book on Picard.
Oh, yes.
You know what I mean? And if he's talking like maybe we'll do more, I mean, unless that's just a misdirect, maybe they finish the job that they started in season 1 and just...
oh, you mean they're not going to announce
the
that they're going to kill Spock before Star Trek 2 comes out?
Well, see, what they did was then they had a scene at the beginning.
They killed him at the beginning. It was brilliant.
Where they killed Spock.
It's brilliant.
It's just, just genius.
The most head-scratching spoiler that I ever saw in my life, and I must have been... How old must I have been in 1984 or 5? I was like 10 or 11. No, sorry, I was like 8.
Nope.
Yep, math.
There you go.
Math.
Mm-hmm. The math podcast.
I remember as a child watching television and going, why are they announcing that they're going to blow up the Starship Enterprise? Because that was the central marketing campaign of Star Trek 3. It was, come with us on the final voyage of this, and they show the saucer blowing up. And I was like, what? Why would you tell me that? You just wait till I get to the Southern Park Mall and sit in the cinema?
I don't know. They thought you wouldn't go otherwise?
I guess.
It's dumb. But you're talking to a guy who obviously, like, I haven't scrutinized the damn...
the poster or the thumbnail.
Listen.
Literal thumbnail.
Yeah, right. What you should do is say, as we continue to talk about these, because we'll just forget it. Not maybe. Like, we'll just do episode sort of recaps. Is you just say, like, here's what you would have seen if you watched the damn trailer, Dave.
Yeah, pretty
at those moments.
There is one character and one actor that I can't believe that you have not discussed, you have not touched on.
Oh, really?
And that you would know from the trailer or in fact any artwork or any interviews at all.
I mean, I'm not. Yeah, I'm definitely spoiler averse.
Well, no, I think this is fascinating.
But I also didn't want to I did not want to hype myself up about this show, given how bad I thought seasons 1 and 2 were. I did not want to be crushed. Remember, I mean, you said it earlier in this episode. Like, we talked at the time for 1 or 2 episodes of Star Trek Picard season 2. It was like, oh, they've course corrected. And in fact, what they had done was just leveled out before a nosedive. So I did not want to. All I could say was I refused to get excited about this, but there might be hope. And then by the time, I mean, I woke up like it was a Saturday morning in 1985, and I realized I was up before anybody else, and there were cartoons on. I woke up the day episode 1 came out, super excited, ran downstairs and watched it. Didn't brush my teeth, didn't make my bed, didn't anything. I watched it, and it was as good as I wanted it to be. Like, it was real. Let me make another point here. It's actually kind of more impressive, not just because of how bad I thought seasons 1 and 2 were, but like when I am at my most depressed about the state of
depressed.
It's
suicidal.
a little overblown. Yeah. But like when I'm at my most like, we'll say it that way, about the state of
despondent.
I have said on more than one occasion, like, we have lived long enough to watch people destroy the things we love. And I know that's dramatic.
No,
but
it's
like,
true.
I couldn't have been a bigger Star Wars fan, and I have not seen Andor because I'm apathetic at this point. And I'm like, I'm sorry if that, like, you don't have to dismiss me, internet. I swear. Like, I still love certain parts of Star Wars, but like, it ain't what it was. And what it is isn't for me. And maybe Andor's the best thing that they've done since the original trilogy, but like I just got to a point where I was like, I'm not against it. I have not carved out the time for it. And by the way, Andor's a great analogy for Picard. Now that I'm thinking about it, I should go watch Andor because it was the dude who saved Rogue One, the dude who's behind the Bourne.
Tony Gilroy or something like that.
Yeah. That's it. Good. Yeah. But like, I've watched Star Trek become a thing that I loved and watch through my fingers as I'm face palming Picard style, right? And in the context of that, they saved it. Discovery still hasn't figured out. That's what I used to say about Discovery, Bob. Like, well, if I judge TNG by its first couple of seasons, I'd have stopped watching. Maybe it'll get better. Spoiler alert, it hasn't. Those people haven't figured it out. The people behind Picard figured it out, and that's blowing my mind. And again, it might just be the shine. It might just be that this is B+ material, but it certainly feels like A+ material to me.
Well, I am looking forward to next week. I'm looking forward to another episode of a television show. Like this is some magical utopia, some nostalgic kingdom. I look forward to our next episode where I hope I get to talk about the lineage of the Titan.
Oh, good.
The various Titans that have come before.
Please do.
And maybe you can tell us, what I would ask you to do for me, come up with several episodes that I could watch of Strange New Worlds that might be good for me to check out.
I have an episode off the top of my head. I won't talk about it now, but it is a lot of what New Trek is hammering you in the face with something that is not really about Star Trek. And they have an episode that is very clever. And like shows that actual nuance exists. So
all right.
That'll be a good one.
All right. Well, hey.
All right.
Thank you for twisting my arm and getting me to put on pants. Yeah. And
you don't have to do that. It's a podcast.
Oh, that's true. Well, okay.